Talking about integrity, one of the apostles of truth, Mahatma Gandhi, when he was in India, in South Africa rather, he stayed in South Africa for about 21 years. So he came here as a young lawyer, and he had a difficult time establishing himself. He really battled initially to establish his career as a lawyer. But despite that, one thing he made it very clear to his clients that if he notices any dishonesty or something wrong that is done, or if the client were to lie, or even in the witness box, he will not defend the client. That was his policy, and he kept to it despite incurring losses. And so it happened that once he was representing a client in the court, and as the opponent lawyer were questioning the client uttered a lie, something wrong which Gandhiji knew. And as soon as Gandhiji heard that it is a lie, he stood up and told the judge that I will not protect, I will not defend my client, I'm withdrawing. And you can imagine there was a hush, there was a silence in the entire court, because this is unprecedented. A lawyer saying his own client is lying. And then his legal fraternity, colleagues from a legal fraternity, thought that that is the end of Gandhiji's career. So what has happened? Did his career end? In actual fact, just the opposite happened. His career really started flourishing. So thereafter, every time he represents a case, the judge already has prejudice in favor of him because of his honesty. Now, this is what the experience of one of the apostles of truth from India, Gandhiji himself. Now, that anecdote in the life of Gandhi may send a wrong idea that satyam or integrity is all about speaking truth. No, speaking truth is only one aspect of integrity. It is more important to speak what is beneficial for the common good of all rather than speaking the truth. Now, integrity, how does integrity help us? It is difficult, but it's extremely rewarding to maintain the level of integrity. Integrity is a tool, a very powerful, very effective tool to win trust. In every human interaction, without exception, there has to be a foundation of trust quotient. In fact, trust quotient or TQ is more important than LQ, that is love quotient. You may love your son very dearly, teenager, maybe 18 or 19-year-old son. You love him very dearly, of course. But will you trust him with your brand new expensive car? He just got the license probably a month ago. You love him very dearly, but you will not trust him. All right. So trust quotient is more important. So integrity is the tool with which we win the trust. If you're a businessman, you need to win the customer's trust. If you're a lawyer, you got to win the client's confidence. If you're in a relationship, spousal relationship, you got to win your spouse's trust. Parents, the relation between parents and children, Parents need to win the children's trust and vice versa. A doctor has to win the patient's trust. In any human relationship, there has to be the trust quotient. So integrity is the tool with which we win the trust quotient. In fact, satyam or satyatvam, there are two important words, satyatvam and dharmatvam. That is almost near equivalent of the word integrity. Satyam is the foundation of sustained success. If you want to maintain a sustained level of success in every endeavor, satyatvam or dharmatvam is one of the most essential component. In fact, this maxim, satyameva jayate, is from the Mundaga Upanishad, one of the well-known Upanishads, that is the part of Atharva Veda. And this maxim was adopted as the motto of India on 26 January 1950. So that is the motto of India. Now, irony is that Satyameva Jayate, truth alone triumphs, truth alone wins. That's what it literally means. Now, the irony is that although India's motto is Satyameva Jayate, if you look at the corruption perception index of India, India is very low. India ranks about 78 in world's perception of corruption. And Denmark being number one, in terms of rank, it's top rank, and New Zealand is the second. And India is very low. Our rank is only 78. Yet, no other, you can research, no other country in the world has got a motto wherein truth alone triumphs and our corruption perception is very, very low. Now, corruption transfers wealth from poor to the rich. That's a problem. It transfers wealth from powerless to powerful. That is the adverse impact of asatyam or corruption. In fact, it cost India about $14 billion. It cost the world economy over $1 trillion. That's the amount of negative impact. So satyatvam or dharmatvam is the actual word for integrity. Now, talking about integrity, there are many, many definitions you'll find people talking about for the word satyam or integrity. Some of the often used definitions are, they say integrity is a complete alignment of your thought, word, and deed. In other words, what you think, what you say, and what you do are in alignment. Then you are practicing a life of satyam. Yes, it is true. Integrity, satyam, is also defined as what you do when nobody is watching. When you are your own master, nobody to supervise, can you maintain the same level of integrity when there are people to impress? Integrity is also what would you do or what you would not do if you know you would never be caught or if you never be found out. Then you are maintaining the level of integrity. For example, let's say, to take a mundane example, you went to a restaurant with your family and you ordered your favorite meals and you enjoyed the meal, and the waiter came and delivered the bill. And you ordered probably 8 items and he only charged you 6 items. What would you do in that situation? And you'll never be caught if you don't pay that extra for 2 additional dishes. In other words, integrity is when you don't have anything to hide from others. It is when you don't have the fear of being caught. because there's nothing to hide. So Satyam is keeping up your principle, your commitment, even if you suffer pain and or loss now, because long term, that alone triumphs. It is the law. It is the universal law of life. Satyam is keeping up your principle, even if you suffer loss or it puts you through inconvenience. In fact, there is an interesting anecdote in the life of J.R.D. Tata, the pioneer of Indian industry. This has happened in probably in 60s or 50s. There was an advertisement in one of the newspapers in Mumbai that there was a child, a polio victim. He was suffering from polio, he can't walk. And he had to travel from relatively central area of Mumbai to one of the suburbs. And because he cannot take public transport, he has to have a vehicle going that side. So the advertisement was, if anybody is traveling from Mumbai to the neighboring suburb, please, can they give a lift? Not even free, for a cost. And those days, Mumbai must have had about 15 or 18 million people. Now it is over 20 or 25 million people in Mumbai. All right. Out of about 15 or 16 million people, only one person responded. And that was J.R.D. Tata. And he maintained that commitment. Of course, first a couple of weeks, he himself personally dropped the ball. And thereafter, of course, he delegated that job to somebody else. All right. So he made a commitment and kept to it until the boy is graduated. So Satyam is keeping your principle, despite knowing that there may be loss, there may be inconvenience. All right. So if you want to assess your level of integrity, ask yourself this question. That is, what is the gap between who you are and what people think you are? What is the answer to the question? That is who you are and what people think you are. The further the gap between who you are and what people think you are, the lesser our integrity. The narrower the gap between who you are and how you project yourself in front of the people, narrower the gap, the better our level of integrity. So integrity or Satyam is reducing the gap. Now what happens is, when we can project ourselves as a divine, very saintly person, very noble, very truthful person, but what we actually are, that gap matters a lot, because sooner or later, that gap, if it gets exposed, that will attract a great level of distrust. Whether no matter what profession, you're a businessman or a professional or a doctor or in any human relationship for that matter. In fact, talking about integrity, I would categorize the entire humanity into three types. There are three types of people. They are the honest people, the dishonest people, then there is a very dangerous category. Those people who are legally dishonest. Honest people, you have no problem. Dishonest people also, you will have no problem, because if you know that they are dishonest, all right? But the dangerous category is people who are legally dishonest. Very often in the corporates, legal and accounting fraternity, you'll find practicing this, that is being legally dishonest. I'm not painting the whole corporate with one brush, of course, but you find generally these practices in the corporate world, when it comes to legal or accounting practices, they're legally dishonest. And I would call the legally dishonest people political thieves. All right. Politician. You got to understand the distinction between politician and statesman. Gandhi was a statesman. Nelson Mandela was a statesman. And I would say our present Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, a statesman. Today, it is insult to call somebody a politician because the perception is not very pleasant. So legally dishonest, I would call them political thieves. The legally dishonest people are very dangerous because ordinary people, ordinary thieves, what do they steal? They steal your money, they steal gold or wallet or bag or all the petty things they steal. But the legally dishonest people, the political thief, they can steal our future. They can steal our career. They can steal our education, our health, our business. They can steal opportunities. They can steal our happiness. They steal our culture. They can even steal our country. That is the problem. That is where the legally dishonest people. The funny part is that the ordinary thief choose whom to rob. But we choose the political thieves to rob us. Isn't it? And the most ironic part is that the police and judiciary nab and arrest the ordinary thieves. And the police look after, protect, take care, serve the legally dishonest or political thieves. Again, I'm not brushing the entire politician with the same brush, please. I'm not painting the entire politician with the same brush. There are some exceptional politicians or statesmen who lived a life of extreme level of integrity and passed on, lived a very memorable, impactful life. Now, when you violate integrity, ladies and gentlemen, you got to remember this. When you violate integrity or when you violate satyatvam or dharmatvam, all right, when we violate that, one can be caught when we are least expected. When you violate that integrity, one will be caught when you least expected. We have no idea where. Once there was a contractor. He saw the advertisement in the newspaper for a specific construction project. All right. So he prepared his bid or contract, and he decided last moment, instead of sending it by courier or post, he decided to hand deliver. So he went to the office and the receptionist welcomed him, and the receptionist said, you can meet the CEO if you prefer. All right. Now, when he was guided to the CEO's office, there was a document on his table. And what was the document? It was a proposal or a bid from his competitor, because from the letterhead, it is visible that it's a quotation. It's a quotation from the competitor. And on top of that quotation, there was a Coke bottle placed. And where was the Coke bottle placed? Exactly where the total figure was marked. So the Coke bottle was placed, the total at the area where the total is written. And he couldn't see what is the total. So if he would lift the Coke bottle and see the figure, and he can quickly change his own quotation, make it lower, and he can win the contract. That was his intention. And he looked around and nobody's watching. It was very clear. And as he lifted the Coke bottle, what happened? The base of the Coke bottle was open. It was hollow. And it was filled with tiny ball bearings, tiny, balls of the ball bearing, the steel balls, full of it. And hundreds or thousands of ball bearings flew all over. And he was in a most embarrassing situation because he lifted it. Now what happens is integrity will be tested when you least expect it. It comes back to you. This is what in India we call the law of karma. The law of karma is nothing but the law of consequences. Remember, our life is governed by the law of consequences. Once, to give you another story, there was a carpenter. This carpenter worked for a contractor for probably about 20 years. And having worked for the contractor for 20 years, one day he thought to himself, I've been working for this man for 20 years. Why should I be working for him? Why not I start my own business? Why not I start my own enterprise? So he approached the contractor and said, sir, I'm very, very grateful to you that you employed me the last 20 years. I want to move on. I want to be on my own. I want to start my own business. And the contractor said, by all means, I will support you in whatever way. Go ahead. My best wishes to you. But please do me one more favor. Contractor said, please do me one more favor. And the carpenter thought, it's only fair, having worked for him for 20 years. Let me do one more favor. What is that? He said, build one more house. Just complete one more house. Thereafter, you can move on. So the boss prepared, gave him the design. This is the budget, this is the design, this is the plan, etc. And usually the carpenter, he takes about 1 year to build the house, because he pays attention to detail. He makes sure that every single details are taken care of, and it does a thorough job. But this particular house, he finished in a record time, in 4 months instead of 1 year. He went and got all kinds of substandard material. He didn't pay attention to detail. He wanted to quickly finish the house and move on. And he finished the house in record time in 4 months. And it was a turnkey project. He locked the house, took the key, and went to the contractor and said, sir, I'm really grateful to you. Here is the key. You can go and check. Everything is complete. The boss took the key and gave it back to him and said, this house is for you. Now, this is what we call the law of consequences. The law of consequences are invisible. In life, what is invisible is more important than what is visible. So many laws of nature, the laws that governing human thoughts and human actions are not visible. What is invisible is more important than what is visible. If you look at the tallest building in Dubai, Burj Khalifa, it's been there for over a decade now. All right. The engineers and contractors and architects who designed and built the building, they followed certain laws of nature. That is why it is built, it is standing there. But when you go and see the building, you can only see a tower covered with thousands of pieces of glasses. That's all that you can see. But inside, of course, you can predict that there is concrete, steel, and everything else. But the fact that the building is standing there, it is built based on certain laws of nature. If any one of them have violated the law, the building would not have stood there. Similarly, but those laws based upon which the building is built is not visible. What is visible is only the building. What is invisible, which is the laws governing that edifice, is more important than what is visible. Similarly, when you see certain successful people who are peaceful, happy, successful, their business is sustained over decades. Like I mentioned, Tata, it's a 150-year-old business. All right. It is because they have followed certain laws of life and living. And one of the inviolable laws that govern human life is law of satyatvam or dharmatvam. Both the words are, it's got overlapping meanings. Now, when we talk about law, remember, the law of karma is inviolable. Law of karma, there is no police to enforce it. There are no lawyers to interpret it. There are no magistrate to pass judgment over it. There is no court of appeal. There is no punishment, only consequences. And you have to live by your own free will and governed by your own conscience. Under the law of karma, you are the court and jury. You are the prosecutor and the defense. You are the plaintiff and defendant. All is you. So therefore, the law of dharma or the law of satyam is absolutely vital to maintain that sustainable success. there's some interesting case studies to understand this principle. And one of the case studies is the success of this small country, as you know, Singapore. How did Singapore got rid of corruption based on these values? Singapore got, it's a relatively young country. It got its freedom in 1965. At the same time as some of the other countries in Africa, like Ghana. And in a matter of about 5 decades, the country brought its economy one of the most powerful, although it is a small economy. The first prime minister of Singapore was Lee Kuan Yew, who was one of the amazingly ethical leaders. What did he do? How did he remove corruption? In fact, when Singapore got freedom, their per capita income was only a meager $500. Today, Singapore's per capita income is a staggering $65,000. One of the reasons is that they brought in the principle of Satyutam or Dharmatam. And how did they do that? How did Lee Kuan Yew do that? He made the politicians accountable, a very unique way, unprecedented again. He brought the country on the principle of meritocracy and pragmatism and integrity. Meritocracy's job is given to based on merit. Pragmatism is like, it doesn't really, they don't look at the background. It's like saying whether the cat is black or white. So long as the cat can catch mouse, it's good for the job. And the third level is integrity. So how did he bring about the principle of integrity? If a junior politician is corrupt, the senior politician is punished. If a junior politician is corrupt, a senior person is punished. I mean, his own boss. If a senior bureaucrat is corrupt and the minister is punished, can you imagine? If a senior bureaucrat is corrupt, the minister under whom the bureaucrat is operating, the minister is punished. And so there's many cases like that. If your junior bureaucrat is corrupt, the senior is punished. They followed this age-old leadership maxim. Yatha Raja Tada Praja. They practice that in reverse. Yatha Raja Tata Praja. That means as the leader, as the king, so the subjects. So if the junior people are corrupt, they actually blame the seniors, because the law is that as the leader, so the followers. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna give out this incredible maxim. In the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the 21st verse, it reads, Yadyat acharati sreshtaha tattad devetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute logastatanu vartate. The translation of that verse read, whatsoever the superior people does, that alone other people do. And whatever standard he sets, that the world follows. Now that is what the first prime minister of Singapore used. That if the leader is truthful, the followers bound to be following the same principle. Now, if you look at corrupt nations below 50 rank, you find generally this is what is happening. And we haven't heard, at least last probably 5 or 6 or 7 years, maybe 6 years or so, not much of scams have surfaced in India. The political scams and corrupt practices, there was accusations, but it's not improved. Why? Because Yatha Raja Tata Praja. As the leader, so the followers. So integrity. Now, another very important aspect is that integrity is the foundation of self-confidence. Integrity is the foundation of self-esteem. Now, we often talk about, especially among the youth, when I get a chance to speak to the youth, the one of the very important aspect that they need to understand, and they ask this question, is that how do we develop that self-confidence? Self-confidence doesn't come just because you listen to a lecture on self-confidence. Integrity, satyatvam or dharmatvam, is the foundation of self-confidence. The moment we violate it, we destroy the self-confidence. For example, imagine this. In a factory, there are about 1,000 people working, and there is a union leader. All right, just visualize the scene. The union leader is approaching his boss for a personal favor. The union leader is approaching the boss for a personal favor. Maybe he wants a hike in the salary or some personal interest. Now, how would he approach the boss when he's thinking about himself? He'll be so meek, timid, gentle. Yes, sir, no, sir, 3 by 4 sir attitude. But imagine the same leader, same union leader is approaching the same boss. Now he's approaching the boss representing the cause of about 1,000 people who are working in the factory. Now, when he's representing the cause of thousands of people, now how does he approach the boss? What will be his style? He'll be on fire. He'll have the confidence, courage, conviction. Now, what brought about this? It is his ability to think about the interest of larger number of people. The moment you become selfish, that compromises your integrity. So you've got to approach life with a deep spirit of self-confidence. And that is what brings about transformation. So self-confidence is the foundation of, or integrity is the foundation of self-confidence. In fact, if you analyze the lives of Gandhis and Mandelas, of statements of that caliber, you'll find what was the secret of their strength. It was simply satyatvam or integrity. Now, what is the keeper of integrity? What keeps integrity? Now, if you look at the psychosomatic engineering of human personality, if you look at the design of human personality, you find, we have such an incredible tool that prevents us from compromising the law of satyam or satyatva. All right, that is what is called conscience. In fact, there is a difference between human being and being human. Human being we are, because by birth itself, we know that we are born as a human being. Although we are human being, but the question is, are we being human? Human being is not your choice because you're born as a human being, but being human is your choice. It's a choice that you make. In fact, talking about that, there are 4 human endowments or human prerogatives. They are, number 1, Atma Bodha or self-awareness. Atma Bodha. Atma means self, Bodha is awareness. The second is Viveka, that means reasoning. The capacity to reason. The third human endowment is Purushartha or self-effort. And the fourth one is Manasakshi or conscience. These are the 4 human endowments. Now, of which, what guides of these 4 human endowments, what actually guides the facet of integrity is conscience or manasakshi. Now, what is conscience or what is manasakshi? It is an inner voice. It is an inner governing factor. That is, when we are tending to do something wrong, something negative, something asatyam, something adharmic, something unrighteous, When we are tending to do something wrong, something negative, there is an unseen hand that holds you back. There's an unseen hand within us that is holding us back, as it were, and telling us that is not the right thing to do. That deep, subtle inner voice is called conscience, or in Sanskrit, manasakshi. For example, here is a diabetic patient. He has been advised by the doctor not to touch sweet. And, generally diabetic patients they generally crave for sweets. So one afternoon, when his wife is not at home, he goes to the kitchen, opens the fridge, he sees plenty of sweets there, ice cream, jalebi, chocolates, etc. So when he sees those sweets, his mind, one aspect of his personality is asking him to eat the sweet. But there's something else in him says, don't touch it. It reminds him of the doctor's warning. So that is what the conscience is. It is that inner voice. In other words, it is the conscience that keeps our thought, word, and deed in harmony with the laws of the universe. I repeat, the role of the conscience is, or manasakshi, is that it keeps our thoughts, word, and deed in harmony with the laws of the universe. It maintains that uniformity. The role of the conscience is that it maintains the balance between legally right and morally right. It is so important to maintain the balance, because what is legally right can be morally wrong, and what is morally right may be legally wrong. It's essential to maintain both legally right and morally right. Today, if you look at the entire legal fraternity, they largely focus on what is legally right, so long as it's legal. But then integrity, or the life of satyam, is not only practicing what is legally right, but is also what is morally right. I heard of a story from a gentleman, that when he went to Singapore for a business trip, he took a taxi from the airport to his hotel. It's about 20 minutes ride. And when he reached the hotel, all right, the meter reading showed about $55 Singapore dollars, right? And the taxi driver said $51. The man asked the taxi driver, but the meter reading shows $55. Why are you charging less? And then he explained that I bring passengers every other day from airport to this hotel. It's a very prime hotel there. And usually it takes about $51. But today, because of my own personal reasons, I have to take a detour, because of which it took some extra driving. That appeared $55. I'm legally entitled to charge $55, but morally, I can only charge $51. Can only happen in Singapore, perhaps. All right. So it is, what is the conscience? It is striking the balance between what is legally right and morally right. Certain times, what is morally right may be legally wrong. Last year, when I was in Melbourne, went for a couple of seminars, lectures, etc. Though I happened to read in the newspaper, there was a case of a lady. What happened was, as she was driving on the freeway, she saw a party of ducks with a small ducklings crossing the road. Cute creature. And as she was driving, her moral instinct took over and she jammed the brake just to save the duckling. And it so happened there was a bike rider, two passengers on the bike, they were riders, right behind her. And the bike rider came and rammed into her car, and both of them died on the spot in that accident. And this case went on for several months, not years, unlike India. All right. And eventually the judgment was she was penalized. Why? Because it is morally right to save the duck, but it is legally wrong to stop on the freeway. What is morally right is legally wrong. So conscience enables, it's a ability to maintain the delicate balance between what is legally right and what is morally right. That is the role of the conscience. So conscience is the keeper of integrity. So when we invest time, effort in spiritual practices, study of the Shastras, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, or any scriptures for that matter, when we engage in other spiritual practices, one of the impact happens on our personality is that our conscience becomes loud and clear. Almost with 10% accuracy, our conscience will guide our actions rather than whims and fancies, rather than selfishness. You know, in the Mahabharata, as you all know the story, the Kauravas unfairly, through the unfair game of dice, usurped the throne of Pandavas, and the Kauravas sent them to the forest for 13 years, 12 years, and for 1 year incognito. And they lived in the forest for 13 years and came back after their exile was over and sought the kingdom from the Kauravas. And the Kauravas refused to budge. Duryodhana said, I will not give you space enough to place the tip of a needle. Go to hell. That was the response. They refused to budge. And it was legally right for the Pandavas to fight and regain the kingdom. It's very easy, all right? They had the power. In fact, during the exile in those 13 years, the Pandavas were preparing for the war. And when they sought the kingdom, it would have been easy for them to fight and kick the Kauravas out of the kingdom. But they decided to negotiate because it was legally right for the Pandavas to fight and gain the kingdom. But well-wishers advised the Pandavas, including Krishna himself. Krishna went on to his knees requesting Kauravas to return the kingdom. He said, give them 5 districts. Kauravas said no. Give them 5 villages or 5 cities. Kauravas said no. And when they refused to budge, that is the time Krishna said, war is the way. Because although it was legally right to fight and gain the kingdom, but it was morally wrong. What is legally right and morally right? Now, that exactly is the role of conscience. So conscience, the voice of the conscience is so strong that you cannot but hear it. But at the same time, it is so subtle that you got to be sufficiently introvert to be able to focus and listen to the call of the conscience. And when you are true to your own conscience, you can never go wrong. William Shakespeare expressed it so beautifully when he said, this above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. William Shakespeare said, you got to follow your conscience as meticulously and precisely as night follows the day. This above all, in fact, this particular quotation that I'm talking to you is from Hamlet, a beautiful piece of literature there. It's a dialogue between father and son. The father is talking to the son. Son was going to London, from London to Paris for higher education. And just before he was leaving, he came to the father and kneels down in front of him and said, please bless me. And father gives a series of advice that is essential for the son when he's leaving home. In fact, every parent must read that piece of advice. Having given a series of very practical advices, the father, that is Polonius, this particular section is often referred to as Polonius' advice. So the father Polonius said, this above all, more than all this, Thine own self be true. Be true to your own conscience. Thine own self be true, and it must follow as night the day. You got to follow your conscience as meticulously and precisely as night follows the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. Once you are true to your own conscience, you are true to the whole universe. Although sometimes when you are being true to your conscience, it might displease somebody else, but that shouldn't matter. You cannot please anybody. If you are living a life of pleasing everybody, that is the recipe for failure. What is important is to ensure that are you heeding the call of the conscience. So when you are listening to the call of the conscience within and meticulously focusing or maintaining the dictations of the conscience, then you are living a life of satyam. That is the life of satyatva. That is the life of dharmatva, because what is true to the conscience is true to everybody else. It's beneficial to everybody else. All right. And what destroys what prevents you from listening to the conscience are three things. One is our selfishness, our ego, and desires. When our desires are very strong, just as like I gave the example of a diabetic patient, his desire to eat the sweet is so strong that he is not able to listen to the call of the conscience. That's what happened to us. Sometimes our selfish motives are very strong. As a result, we don't fear compromising, taking shortcuts. That's what happens in the corruption. Sometimes the strength of ego is so powerful that it suppresses the call of the conscience. So what destroys our satyatvam or dharmatvam is selfishness, ego, and desires. So therefore, what enables these three factors to be positive, to be under control is sadhana. That is where our shastras comes in. The entire Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, all the shastras are eventually helping us to reduce our ego, selfishness, and desires. And once they are under control, our conscience are very alive and alert, and our activities are perfectly in alignment. It is in harmony with the laws of the universe. That thereafter, when you live such a life, you are truly great. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the life of satyatvam or dharmatvam.